Good afternoon, my friends. I have come
Good
to
afternoon.
join you once again. This is your friend Carl, and I am here to act as master of ceremonies to moderate this forum of question and answers that you have submitted and to allow us to share some knowledge with you. So at this time, we're going to go directly into the questions and ask our good friend Carol to begin the session.
Thank you, and you're most welcome, Carl and friends. The first question is from Susan St. Jean. As a collective, humanity, what is our vibrational frequency quotient? And what is the most important thing we can do individually to assist humanity's ascension at this time?
As you are aware, the Earth is changing its frequency. It is rising, it is vibrating much faster than it was 10 years ago, and it has much further to go. This change of frequency affects every human being on the planet. For some people, it is quite distressing because they are stuck in their own thought patterns and their own belief systems. And as this frequency is going higher and higher and becoming more spiritual and less dogmatic and less stuck on the dogmas of the past and the religions of the past and all the uh, lies that were taught to the people over the centuries of time, the people who are stuck in that vibration are going to experience much discomfort. They are going to be almost as if they are going mad because the world will no longer make sense to them. And eventually they are going to come to the realization that they have been lied to for centuries, and therefore they need to adjust their thinking. It is that time they will be seeking out people who have more spiritual understanding. For those people who have the spiritual understanding now, you have to understand that you need to become as flexible as you can possibly be. You can sit down and do an affirmation and talk to the Lord God of your being and tell your Lord God that you are aware of the changes of frequencies and you wish to modulate with them. You wish that your vibration increases along with that. You ask to be in harmony with the vibrations of the world and therefore ask for it to happen. And as you have been talking about in this session, what you are putting out there in thought and putting out in energy will manifest, and you will slowly modulate along with the frequency. You may start to feel that, oh, you feel a bit different here and there because you are going to be vibrating on a different frequency, on a slightly higher frequency. So, what you are asking is that you are staying in harmony with the vibration of the earth, and as you continuously do this, and again, you do not have to do this every single day. You could do it once a week. You could do it a couple of times a week. But the point is, you are programming your soul to realize that things are changing and you're expecting your soul to change with it. You're expecting it to grow with it as the frequency of the planet grows with it. And therefore, you can be in harmony with what is happening. You will also begin to be more in harmony with us in the world of spirit because your frequency is rising and it is going to meet our frequency. As many of you understand, when spirit communication takes place, the medium has to raise the frequency of his or her body, and the spirit lowers the frequency of his or her body, and they kind of meet in the middle, and that is why the word medium came about in the first place. So what is happening is that as has been discussed before, You are all going to become mediums in the long run. You will all be hearing the words of spirit. You will all be being inspired by the words of spirit, because your frequency is going to enter a frequency that is going to be so close to spirit that you will no longer need a medium. You will be able to communicate with the spirit world on your own frequency. But that is off into the future, and that will be happening. So all we're asking is that you talk to your Lord God of your being, command it to be flexible, command your thinking to be flexible. We notice when certain things are very rigid in your mind, and try to erase that rigidity, because rigidity is very much going to be a negative force in this change. As things are modulating higher and higher, as things are rigid and immovable, friction occurs, and therefore problems will occur. So the point is to modulate your frequency as much as you can.
Thank you. The next question is from Luvera. If man evolved from apes, why won't people believe the same for Adam and Eve?
You must understand that we are talking about a dichotomy of thinking, almost a war. You have the people who have hold that book, that Bible, as the God's honest truth, that it has never been changed, and it has never been tampered with, and has never been edited, which is a complete falsehood. And you have the people who are the scientists who work outside of that religious dogma, who come to their own conclusions. So you have the religiously enslaved people to the book, and you have the people who believe in evolution. For over a century of time, they have always, these groups have been fighting with each other, because the people want to believe that God is perfect, and therefore everything in the book is perfect, and that's the way people were created. So man coming from apes doesn't make any sense. What these people who are the Bible thumpers, if I call them that, what they do not realize is that so much of the stories of in that are recorded in the Bible are not eyewitness videos of historical facts. They are myths. They are stories that were created in order to help people understand how the world was created and how mankind was created. They do not just want to understand that it is a myth, that it is a story. Many characters in the Bible were real people. There were many people like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Elijah, Jesus, so many of the prophets. They were real people. But that does not mean that every single thing that is talked about with the early people in the Bible, like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Joseph, it doesn't mean that everything is 100% factual, or it wasn't. Or when the book was first written, those people were long in the spirit world. They were no longer around. There was no one to ask. There were no eyewitnesses. There was no one there to find out whether these stories are correct or not. They were created to inspire a certain way of thinking, a certain belief, and a certain God system, and not to believe in the neighboring gods. And therefore, this is what happened. In actuality, you are correct. There was an evolution of animals, from small one-cell animals all the way to human beings who did modulate from the apes. And therefore, yes, there is that lineage. But you will not get people who believe in the book to accept that. That will not occur until people come to the understanding of the truth of the Bible. The Bible is not a bad book. It contains a lot of history of mediumship, which is accurate. It contains a lot of history of the people, the mediums who demonstrated their gifts, which are accurate. But it is also full of man-made dogmas to control people's minds. And people will come to realize eventually that much of the Bible needs to be sifted out and discarded, and the gems of mediumship need to be understood. And when that happens, then the Bible will be a book of truth that people think it is. And when the man-made dogmas is erased from it, there will be a day when that happens. But those people will go through much turmoil when they have to abandon their beliefs that they believed all their lives and for centuries. And that is when they will seek out people who have the spiritual truths, and they will need much education.
Thank you. The next question is from Patricia. Is the current Pope the final remaining Pope for the official Catholic Church?
It has long been prophesied that this is the last Pope. There was a medium who was also a member of the Catholic Church who wrote a long list of popes, and this one is the final one. What is happening to all the world is that all religions are going to disintegrate. They are going to disintegrate because the energy that holds their man-made dogmas is not going to work any longer. It is not going to keep the people enslaved any longer, and people are going to come to realize that that is happening. The church that you are talking about will come to a complete end. The people who are believed in that system will come to the realization that yes, there were certain truths in that system, just as there are certain truths in all religions, but a lot of it wasn't. Most of it wasn't. And most of it was created for greed purposes, so that a certain class of people could live off the people, so that the priests did not have to work. They could sit and collect their money. They could sit and have the finest clothes. They didn't have to go out and labor as the majority of people did, and therefore they wanted it that way. They didn't want people to think. They didn't want people to question. But it will come to a time where things will happen, where phenomena will happen on the Vatican building, and it will come to a point where it will begin to fall apart. There will be earthquakes near there, and the structure will no longer be totally safe. And the treasures that are in the basement of that building will be exposed, and people will come to realize how much hoarding has taken place over the centuries of time by that organization. So yes, this will be the final Pope, because the days of the age of ignorance is coming to a close, and the days of the age of knowledge is at hand and is beginning. And therefore, in this transition, things will begin to happen.
Thank you. And the next question is from Carol Barna, and this is for Carl. In our last meeting, you kindly described what happens when one crosses over in terms of the silver cord being severed when spirit returns to the source. Can you please describe the steps that the soul now takes upon entering the new plane? My brother has passed away due to COVID, and this information would help me to understand.
When the soul leaves the body, It leaves, it is in the center of the chest, as we have talked about, and it begins to unseat itself and it begins to journey up because it is going to go through the chakra in the head. That same chakra where you allowed the blue energy to enter during your healing service is where the soul will exit. It perceives it as a tunnel and it goes up the body and exits out the crown chakra and goes in and goes up in vibration. Once the silver cord snaps, it it releases all physicality on the soul. So the soul is now energy. And the energy is going to go into a frequency modulation. It is going to speed up. And it is going to speed up into its natural state of where it's at. As was discussed today, everybody's soul is vibrating on its own specific frequency. During your healing service, you modulated your frequency so that they were all on the same level. But that will only last for a certain amount of time. And after your healing service has concluded, which it has, your energy is starting to go back already into its own frequency. It will, so when your soul leaves the body, it goes into its own frequency and it ends up in the dimension in which it's earned. For example, if you were a person that committed many misdeeds and many crimes against people, you are going to end up on a much lower frequency in the spirit world than a person who did a lot of good deeds to people and led a spiritual life. So your frequency is governed by how you lived your life and where it is naturally resonating. You end up on that plane. When you arrive, you are met by many people. You are met by your relatives. You are met by your friends who have preceded you into the spirit world. It is a grand reunion. Think about what happened in the physical world when your brother left this world. You got together and you had a ceremony, you had a funeral, and there was much crying and grieving and sorrow because your brother left this particular plane. And that is very natural. But for when your brother arrives in the spirit world, it is a grand reunion. All his people are there. All the people that he knew, all his relatives, all his friends, all his coworkers, they are all there, and they have this grand reunion and rejoicing, and so forth. Just as, if you think about it, when the soul leaves the spirit world to come into the physical world in a little baby, there's a lot of sorrow in the spirit world because the soul is leaving the family again. So it is the grand reunion. There is time that happens there. Now, what happens after that is very difficult to say because it's very individualized. For some people, they may not have expected to go into the spirit world and arrive there kind of by mistake, not mistake, but by surprise. They weren't expecting it. Especially people who die in car accidents and things of that nature. So there's a bit of shock that they're in the world of spirit. Those people need to go to a resting place, which is called the hospital, and they are tended to until they have survived and adjusted to the fact that they are in the world of spirit. People uh, who are more knowing of what will happen when you die. So that makes a big difference as the knowledge you take to the spirit world. For if you understand that there's going to be a grand reunion and you understand suddenly, oh, I'm in the spirit world, you may have ended up there before you thought you were going to, but you may adjust very easily to being there and not need to go into the hospital. What will eventually happen is that you will be, after some contemplation, you will decide how you want to spend your time, how you're going to live your life in this new world. You have many choices, you have many desires, hobbies, things that you want to pursue, are things that are all available to you according to what you want. This is why it was called paradise, because you could do whatever you decide you wanted to do. For myself, I continued my mission of teaching people about the gifts of the Spirit. And I have worked with people who cross over into the spirit world, who have all of a sudden have this great desire to contact and communicate with their loved ones in the spirit world. But if they came from a religion that said that spirit communication was evil and should be avoided, they had no idea how to go about it. So they need much education on how to how the laws of communication work, and I work with them so in order so they can contact their loved ones. Again, most loved ones can be contacted through the dream state, even if they do not seek out mediums, and therefore they certain experiences can be conducted even for people who are very close-minded. So I hope that this gives you some understanding of what happens when the soul arrives. It is always a joyous occasion here, a very joyous occasion. And I'm not saying that it is an occasion that is free from tears, because so many tears of joy are shed in this world when the reunions happen. And surprisingly, even in my case, when I crossed over, the first person who met me was my mother. And my mother and I did not always get along. We did not see eye to eye on a religious basis. We were in completely different worlds. And that somewhat colored her perception of me. But she was the first one to greet me. And she was the first one to tell me about how proud the family was of the work that I was doing. Because once they came to the world of spirit, they rejected their Baptist teachings and they learned the value of spirit communication. And they finally understood me for the first time in my life, which was actually the beginning of my death. How ironic is that? But that's so to give you that kind of perception of how things work. I hope that this explanation has brought you some peace.
Thank you so much. The next question is from Fenton. I often feel like a guinea pig at times. Is the human race on Earth an experiment of some kind, free will? And are there other forms of life on other planets going through experiments on how they conduct themselves?
My friend, yes, there is life on other planets, but the life on other planets is very much more advanced than the life that's on your planet, because your planet has had the uh, lead weights and anchors placed upon it of religions and their dogmas and their their lies to anchor you into ignorance, and where the other planets did not. You feel the way you feel because you are susceptible to the world of spirit. There are times where spirit has certain projections that they wish to give to you, certain suggestions of maybe going to the right instead of the left, if we want to use that example. And you may have preconceived that you are going to the left, and therefore all of a sudden you have this pull to the right, and you feel like you're a puppet on a string and that you are not in charge of your own life. This is not true. You have free will. You have the choices to make. It is your right to do that. However, you are open to the suggestions of the world of spirit, and the suggestions sometimes put out opportunities right before you. So while you think you're going to the left, all of a sudden you see this wonderful thing down the path on the right, and you decide, oh, well, I'll go to the right. But that really wasn't what I wanted to do, but I'm going to the right, but I don't want to do it, but I'm going to the right. So you're feeling that you are not um, let me put it this way. It is almost as like you're sailing on a ship on rough seas. There are lots of ups and downs, and this is happening because you are susceptible to the world of spirit. If you were not, then the sea would be very calm and you'd be sailing to the left all the time, because that's what you wanted to do. So, yes, there are many things that the spirit world provides to people who are open. They are opportunities, they are not mandates. And that sometimes you can think that you are just a chess pawn being moved by some grand spirit, making the moves when it really isn't you. But remember, if you didn't want to do that move, you can say no and not do it. So you are in control of your own ship. You are the master of your own ship, as many people used to say. And therefore, yes, it feels as if you're a puppet, but in actuality, you're not.
Thank you. And the next question is from Ria. It seems that our society is disintegrating and polarizing with or through more egoistical tendencies. What can people do to rebuild and stimulate the necessary community building?
My friend, what you would need to do is to find people of like mind. And with those people, you can share your truths and you can build a community as you are seeking to do. There is no way to fix the world, to fix everyone in the world. As we have just said, everyone has the free will. Everyone can think the way they want to. So for the people who are buying into the power trips and the ego trips that are being projected out there, when they buy into that and go along with it, that is their choice. And if you were to give them spiritual truths, they would probably look at them, take them, and throw them away. So it is not worth your energy to do that. You cannot save anyone who doesn't want to be saved. There will come a time when these people who are closed minded will realize that they are mistaken, they have been lied to, and it is at that point their minds will open up enough that when they come to you, you can plant the spiritual seed within them and it will blossom and grow. But without that condition being there, you cannot help them. They need to help them. They need to seek out the help. They need to want the information and the knowledge. They need to know that they need to change the way they think. So for you who understand all this, find people who can work with, who you can build community with, that you can share with, whether it is through your technology as you are experiencing right now, or whether you are doing it in the physical level as many meetings that had taken place few years ago before this virus took place had happened, whether you do it that way or the other, it matters not because the energy, the connections that are being made now, even with using this technology, are helping to move the cause forward. It's helping to raise the vibration of the world as we have been talking about today, and is creating what needs to happen. So we ask you to not give up hope. We ask you not to feel that you have to save and work with everyone. You need to work with those who are ready for the knowledge, and those who are ready. They are on all different categories. It's kind of like a staircase, if you will. Think of a staircase that goes up 5 stories in a building. Okay, some people are on the very first step of their spiritual understanding. Some people are on the 5th floor. There are people all along there. There are so many people that need help and need to understand more and more advanced ideas as they climb that staircase. And you are one who can help teach them and help provide them this information. So work with the people who are ready for it. Do not try to save or convert people who are not. They will come to their own realization, and at that point, they'll be ready for your help.
Thank you. The next question is from Susan Yu, and it is: Greetings. I felt to ask this for the benefit of the channel and for our sessions. Can you offer something we can do for the channel when he comes out of trance in these sessions to benefit him for any energy lost in the channeling he does. Also, for us as we are participating and supporting. Thanks so very much.
We thank you for that question, for it is a very generous opportunity for us to talk about what is happening. The most important thing for you, the audience, to be doing for this medium at this time is to be sitting there and giving him all the attention you can. You can project energy to him just as you projected energy to yourselves when you did the healing at work. You can connect, you can visualize energy flowing from you through the ethers to him to energize this work. In reality, it's already happening. For this medium has noticed that when he was in class and working with one or two people, it is one level of what's happening, and it's a very different experience when working with a number of people, such as here right now. So by giving your attention and sending your love and sending your good energy towards him, it does help to facilitate the energy that is here. When he will leave this trance state and go back to his own frequency, you can continue to project energy to him, but that will also help. But in reality, what is going to happen is that he will be fairly well for a while, and then maybe a half hour, an hour, he will feel a slump. Sometimes that slump is more severe than others, and sometimes it's not. It all depends how the energy of the session went. But it is something that it's one needs to understand that no matter what type of mediumship that is being done, whether it's standing before a group of people, even if it's on the internet, and giving spirit messages from loved ones, or if it's trance work, the medium needs to have a certain amount of energy in order for us to establish the link, and the medium needs to hold that energy for a period of time. This particular medium has been under a lot of training in the last several years in holding energy. For he has been doing quite a bit of private healing work where he is going into a blending energy with spirit, which is the same as trance, and therefore holding that energy as the healing takes place. And the healing sessions were lasting between 25 and 30 to 40 minutes. So therefore, he has been in the process of being able to hold the energy for quite a bit of time. And as he has taken these classes recently, he has removed other blocks that he had in his mind, and therefore that also helps us to sustain the energy even longer. So yes, there is some depletion, but he has been working up with this. It's kind of like if you think about those people who lift heavy weights to make big muscles on their bodies. The more they do it, the more their muscles grow, the more the capacity they have, the more they can lift. It is the same thing with energy, and he has been working on this for quite some time, and therefore is able to hold the energy long enough to have these sessions. So we thank you so much for asking this question, and we thank you for the energy that is being transmitted now. For there is a change, and there is a more of a facility of habit of speaking at this point because of what has been said right now. So we are most grateful to you for bringing this up so we could explain and teach it.
Thank you. And we have a question from Barbara, and she's asking for a clarification of your response to Carol Barna about what happens when people pass over. And so she's saying, just to clarify, when you pass on to spirit, you gravitate to the frequency you earned on earth. With that in mind, how are all your loved ones there when you pass? Aren't some on different frequencies?
That is an excellent question. You need to understand that the barriers between the frequencies, the levels that are there, the divisions, if you would, that barriers is a terrible word. The divisions between the worlds and the frequencies are not made of steel and stone. They are uh, they are porous. They can be crossed over. If a person, let's say, was a person who committed many crimes and ended up in the lower levels of the world of spirit, they end up there and they have their existence and their being with a lot of other criminal elements, and they are there. And all of a sudden, they come to the point in their existence when they realize, I really messed up. I shouldn't have done all the bad things I did on earth. It is that thought that goes out up through the levels of the spirit world, and a spirit that's on a higher frequency will come down and work with that person. Now, the person can't go up until they earn the right to go into a higher frequency, but the ones who are higher can go down very easily. So therefore, they go down and do the teaching, and hopefully the person ends up learning a little bit of how they should have lived their lives. They advance a little bit and they go into the next level, and they continue that process until they have worked through all the negativity and karma that they have created. To go back to your question about family members, yes, they are on all different kinds of levels. However, when a person arrives, that is a grand event. And they are allowed to leave the frequency they are to enter into the frequency where the soul is entering. So the grand reunion can take place. They can take place for well, it's difficult to talk about because we don't have time. So therefore it happens, and there is no rush. There's no bell that rings that you have to go back to where you came from. So it is a natural process, but eventually if a person who is not entitled to be on that level, they will have to go back to their own level and and continue to work on what they need to do. That is not to say that the original soul, that new soul that came, who was very attached to that other person, who's now in a different frequency, cannot go down and visit them because they can go down frequency very easily. But the one they're visiting might not be able to come up. It depends on the vastness of the difference between the frequencies. Sometimes it's not much and it can happen, and sometimes it is. But there can be further communication once the family is separates and goes into the frequency that they need to reside in until they go and learn to evolve to where to the higher frequency. If you understand what I am saying, so it is all done by thought, and of course, what is the most important thing to happen for the newly arrived soul is to have that reunion. So people are allowed to visit. They're allowed to visit for pretty much as long as they want, but then they need to go back. But visitation can take place on a need be basis. I hope I made that clear.
Thank you. And if time permits and if the energy is good, we have a few more questions.
You may continue.
This is from Susan St. Jean. Where are we on our trajectory on ascending to 5D? And does getting vaccinated for COVID-19 hinder our ascension? If it does, please explain how.
The question that you ask brings much sadness because
Mm.
the vaccine that you are talking about makes certain changes within the physical body. And those changes do make it more difficult for you to reach 5D. Unfortunately, the whole virus was created in order to create chaos, in order to make people afraid, in order to make people take the vaccine, which can prohibit people from going into 5D, as you have suspected. The vaccines work on the DNA and they make certain altercations which is very difficult to contradict, counteract, and therefore it is better if you refrain from taking it. However, we are working feverishly on coming up with an antidote to the vaccine to restore the DNA properties to allow people to have the flexibility to ascend as you talk about. The whole process of ascension into the 5D sphere is one where it is difficult to explain because it is such a vastly different existence than what you are experiencing in 3D. And therefore, it is hard for you to have the capacity to understand exactly what that all entails. But it is the idea of ascension, is, if you think about it, even as it was taught through your religions, ascension really meant that the physical body was changing frequencies into a much higher vibration. And that is exactly the first process of going into a 5D situation. The the physical body will be vibrating much higher than it is currently. This is something we have been talking about in this whole session. So therefore, we do not need to repeat all that again. However, know that that is why it's important for you to keep working on being, quote, flexible, unquote, being able to adjust to the frequencies, being able to modulate with the frequencies, because these as this is happening, you will get to a point where you will become a much more spiritual person, and therefore once you start living that new spirituality, it gets to a point where you can go into ascension. And you should understand that once you ascend and you take that physical body into a higher frequency, there is all new possibilities. There are new realms, there are new worlds, there are new planets, there are new situations for you to experience and to grow in, that are available on those much higher frequencies, especially when you have taken the physical body with you. So that is what the main goal is. If you have decided to take the vaccine, we do not want you to feel discouraged. We want you to understand that uh, you still can proceed. You can continue to change your frequency. You can continue to grow. You can continue your spiritual path. And it is our hope in the future that at some point we will be able to have an antidote that will allow you complete freedom again to go into the vastness of eternity and the vastness of frequencies that are available once you get into past that threshold. But do not feel upset and do not feel concerned if you have taken the vaccine. We are addressing the problem, and we are most confident that we will come up with a solution. For, as you should know, that all things are created in the spirit world way before they occur in the physical world, and we are the ones who inspire the scientists and inspire uh, the people who work with technology to come up with these new ideas. They think it's new, they think they thought about it, but it's really what we implanted into their brains.
Thank you. And the next question is from Fenton. How many universes are there?
How many do you wish to have? How many do you need? There are an infinite number of universes, more than you can count. You cannot look into your Milky Way and see every star. You can't begin to count them. That's how many universes and planets and frequencies there are out in the spirit world. There are uncountable, infinite numbers. So I cannot give you an answer for that because there really is none. But you only can be in one at a time, so you don't need all that many at once.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Susan Yu. Um, can you tell us about the angelic realm and how they work with us in these times? Thank you so much.
As you are probably aware of, there are certain individuals, that's a bad word, certain souls that never came to live on the earth on a permanent basis. They did not incarnate into a physical body. They did not have the human experience. So they are living a spiritual life and a spiritual existence. And their purpose is to help and guide people in the physical world. That can happen on many different levels, on many different ways. Sometimes they work through the mind, sometimes they work through the emotions, sometimes they impress certain ideas on a certain physical individual. Sometimes they come down and they can take on physical form and they can actually look like a regular human being and interact with a human being and give them guidance and information. And then the individual turns around that has just received the information and that person's vanished instantly, gone. And that's because they are no longer keeping their frequency in the physical level so that they can be seen. So the angelic levels can lower their frequency and materialize, if you wish to use that word, be seen and communicate with a physical person and then instantly vanish. There are instances of this recorded in the Book of Books, with the angels that came to talk to Abraham on the plains there, and that is, yes, that did happen. As we said before, there is truth in the Bible. There's also a lot of nonsense. So therefore, the angelic realms are interact with us on on that kind of basis. Now, on conversely, you can, by talking to the Lord God of your being, ask to link up with an angelic person, especially if you think that you know of a specific one, or you can just ask to be guided by the angelic people and help and reach out to establish a link with them so that they can work with you and be a guide, if you want to use that type of word, to help you. You also have to remember that many times uh, we in the spirit world are bound by certain principles, and we cannot just jump into a person. We cannot just make a person do a certain thing because it's in their best interest, because you have free will. So by you reaching out to the angelic world, you are giving them permission to establish a line of communication with you. And therefore, do not be surprised if shortly afterwards you start having certain types of communication, one way or the other, whether it's telepathy, whether it's they enter thoughts, maybe you see someone. It's hard to say, and it all depends on what needs to be said and how open you are to that. The angelic people are not going to come and materialize in front of you if that's going to scare you to death. That's not going to work. So therefore, they will not use that method. You have to be ready for that kind of interaction. So do not be afraid to reach out to the angelic realms to invite them in, as long as you do it through the proper affirmations, as long as you protect yourself and know that you are working with light beings, it is all fine.
Thank you. And the last question is from Susan St. Jean. What information would you like to share that speaks to our highest best as a collective?
My friends, it is of the utmost importance at this time for you to be consciously aware of what was being said today and the teachings that have occurred. It is of the utmost importance for your highest good to learn to be flexible, to be able to adjust to these changed frequencies. It is for your highest good to reach out into the world of spirit and establish your own communication and not have to rely on mediums, because there is a coming of a day when that will be the norm. It is important for you to lead a spiritual life as spiritual as you can. Yes, the human being will make mistakes. They will get angry. They will use bad words. They will have negative thoughts. But the more that you are aware of keeping your thoughts pure and the keeping your thoughts positive, when that does happen, you can reverse it. You can go out and say, oops, I made a mistake. I take that back. Erase that thought, erase that thought, erase that thought. And that will change the energy that you have just transmitted, because it is part of the human condition. It is important that you are walking in knowledge these days, because as we say, it's a new day is coming, a new age is coming, and you are living that. You are walking the walk from the age of ignorance into the age of knowledge. It is not an easy walk. There are many, many, many souls that have decided to leave this planet and leave the physical world because they did not want to face the challenging times ahead and the challenges of walking through that adjustment. It will be challenging. It is not going to be smooth sailing. There are many rough seas ahead. So the strongest thing you can do is to learn to depend on the Lord God of your being, to learn to depend on being fluid, being flexible, changing your thinking, being open to new ideas as they will be being fed into human consciousness. Because let's face it, my friends, if we were to open the book of knowledge and start reading all its pages to you, we would overwhelm you. You are not ready for all the things that are written in there yet. So it needs to be spoon fed to you. It needs to be taken step by step. So, what we are asking you to do is to be flexible and be open to new ideas and new concepts. And the most important thing you can do is to take what you've learned as a child and that things that you held so dear and thought that they were unchangeable. And when you are confronted with something that contradicts it, the best thing, the highest thing you can do is to stop and reason it out. Think about it. Think about the facts you were given. Think about what you believed before. Weigh it out and decide for yourself which are you going to keep? Which are you going to discard? Can you discard it all, or can you only discard 35% of it at this point? That is fine. You're taking a step towards enlightenment. No one said you have to take giant steps. No one said you have to abandon everything. It is what you, as your own soul, feels comfortable with. So, therefore, you need to adjust. You need to think and reason and decide for yourself. the sad part about all this is that many of you will be surrounded by people who will not want to adjust and not want to change their thinking. And you are going to have to allow them to have their own beliefs. For as we said before, you cannot change someone's beliefs. You can only assist them when they're ready for new knowledge. And that is sometimes very difficult to do, especially if you're dealing with a family member or someone you love dearly, and you know how things are happening and they're blind to it. It is difficult. But we ask you that you need to hold your own light up, your own torch of truth, your own truth, and walk that truth and live that truth and be the example of that truth. For eventually, the person that you're concerned about will wake up and they will see what you have accomplished. They will see where you're at. They will realize they're not there and wonder why and come to you and saying, how do I catch up to you? If you can understand that analogy. So that is our guidance to you at this point, to just know that things are changing, that things are going to be difficult, but you are walking with spirit, and spirit will guide you as much as we can. We will protect you as much as we can. But on the other hand, we can't do all the work for you. Some of it you have to do for yourself, because you have to battle out that and break down those old way of thinking in order to come to live in the new way of thinking. I hope that provides you the answer that you seek.
Thank you, Carl, and all of you. We so appreciate your talking to us. Thank you from our hearts.
We wish to express to you the joy that we feel to be able to give you this information and to be able to present it to you for your consideration and for you to be able to incorporate it into your lives, because the times are changing, as they say, and you need to be a changing. And it is a way that we have come up with to help you along and to guide you to do what the work that you need to do. And we are so happy and pleased for the opportunity to speak to you. We are probably even more happy than you are for us. But it is a wonderful, wonderful experience for us. And we are so happy that we can share this knowledge with you. And for me personally, that I can continue my work from my side and share it with you as I used to when I walked in your plane. It is a very overwhelming and humbling experience. My love and blessings to all of you. So be it. So be it.
Thank you.